I am about to make a video glazing Ian Garry, actually. I know that's not too popular to go with, but if you go back and you watch the post-fight press conference he actually told a lot of truths. Looking back at that fight, it was super close. Obviously, I still think Shavkat won just based off of the bigger shots, but without those bigger shots, we could be seeing a completely different decision. And Ian Garry, he seems like a guy who could take a loss on the chin and only improve. His confidence is not rocked. In fact, right now it's enhanced because he was the one guy who made Shavkat, who was the boogeyman of the welterweight division. Just like Ian Garry said, he made him look human. He is just like the rest of us, kind of. I'm not going to say that because obviously he's fighting in the UFC. But in a perfect world, I would like to see Shavkat fight Belal Muhammad. And as much as I think Belal Muhammad gets a lot of hate, I would like to see Shavkat win the belt. Only reason I'm saying this, you have Ian Garry have a bounce-back fight. It could be against anyone. Could be against Jack Della Mena. I think, honestly, seeing how he handled Shavkat, I think Ian Garry is going to give Jack Della Mena a bit of problems. Or if he wants to play the safe route, the winner of Joaquin Buckley versus Colby Covington, because I still don't know how that fight goes this weekend, and you're going to have Joaquin Buckley versus Colby. And Colby needs to really show up if he's going to want to win this one. And he's going to really need to put on a massive, really good performance if he wants to make me change my mind about Ian Garry. But if Colby Covington really, let's say it's an underwhelming performance, but he still somehow wins. Like, it goes the distance, but it looks like he looked human against Joaquin Buckley. Ian Garry's probably going to pick an easy fight against that version of Colby Covington, and then yada, 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 bounce back fight. Maybe he fights Jack Della Mena just for, insurance's sake, just to make sure that beyond a reasonable doubt he has the title shot. But by those two fights, he's already super duper seasoned. And he has shown with that first Shavkat fight that he has only gotten better. Then we're going to see if they could run it back and Ian Garry could be the one to beat Shavkat. That's interesting because now I never thought of all the welterweight, which has been a very lacking division. Shavkat and Ian Garry now have a respectful rivalry that's going to go a little back and forth, and it's going to have a history, and I don't think we've seen the end of this chapter at all. So you know what? Yeah, for everyone online saying that Ian Garry exposed Shavkat, he definitely exposed Shavkat's weaknesses, and he showed that Shavkat is beatable, but is he going to be the one to actually do it? You know what? Honestly, if Ian Garry goes that route and all the things I am wishing for on my wish list somehow come true and Ian Garry ends up getting the belt, regardless of what you actually think of him as a person, because I know the internet loves to gang up on him a little bit. You know what? Some of the behavior, I get it. It's warranted. The deleting of the Instagram comments rubbed me the wrong way too, and maybe be like, okay, now the booze when he's walking out makes a lot more sense. But he is going to be, if he gets that belt, he'd be a draw because he'd have a lot of fans and he'd have a lot of people wanting to see him lose, tuning in. He would actually probably be doing a welterweight Conor McGregor, another guy from Ireland, making that stuff happen. Could you imagine if that goes down like that? But first, we have to be, I don't have to. I'm not saying we. I want to be very specific with my language. Belal Muhammad is going to have to lose to Shavkat first. Shavkat is going to need to beat Belal Muhammad first, in order for any of that to really take place. So I'm working a couple steps ahead, but in a perfect view, I would like to see Shavkat versus Ian Garry 2 for a welterweight title because, like I said, man, that really goes. And honestly, I will say this though, this isn't the first fight that Shavkat has looked human. Shavkat versus Jeff Neal. I know Shavkat finished Jeff Neal, but that was a back and forth war that made Jeff Neal look really good too. So, and here's the thing. Shavkat obviously doesn't have the most bulletproof game. I don't see his game as anything that's how do you really solve that puzzle. I think he just knows what he's got and he works with it really well, and sometimes he overextends himself. Like sometimes in the Jeff Neal fights, I saw that where Jeff Neal got some good shots in there. It just kind of made that a war, and that's because, although Shavkat just knows who he is and what he has to work with and how he gets it done, that could really probably cost him in the future unless he really evolves. Maybe this Belal Muhammad's going to get this Belal Muhammad fight is going to get him to look at his game and look at his fight game and see if he could add something new. Because, like I said, this is not the first time I've seen Shavkat as beatable. He is very invincible, and this isn't the first time I have thought he was invincible. Like I said, Jeff Neal fight, go back, watch that. That was a back and forth until he got that submission, But that's what I got to say right now. We'll see. There's a lot of questions in the welterweight division now. And honestly, although this was not the finish from Shavkat that we were all expecting, this adds more lore and chapter and marketability even to the welterweight division. But for those of you who think Ian Garry exposed Shavkat and arguably think that Ian Garry could have won that fight, I admit it was a close fight. And you know what? I can't really criticize Ian Garry's fighting after seeing that fight anymore. I can only be a believer in who the fighter he is currently is. Whether, like I said, whether you like him as a person or not, his fighting really showed this weekend, and I can't wait to see more of it. Peace out. Later.